All right. Well, it is the 16th of April, 2025. My name is George Slade. I'm the host of Photobook Banter, and it's a pleasure to welcome friends and new friends and old friends to the Zoom meeting this evening. Um, my guest today is Donna Stirling. Donna is joining us from Queens, New York. Whereabouts in Queens are you?
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills.
Yes.
I have a friend here in the group who is giving us a thumbs
I know,
up.
I'm approving,
He's a
yes.
he's a New Yorker. Um, Robert, it's nice to see you. Um, um, anyway, Donna is a well, you'll have to tell me more a little bit about Float Photo Magazine a little bit later. Is it a physical magazine or online exclusively?
It's mainly an online platform, but we do have often zines and publications that we also print.
Okay. Float, float. Um, Donna uh, received her bachelor's from Hadassah College in Jerusalem. Is that and in photographic communications,
Mhm.
and received her MFA from the School of Visual Arts in New York City in 2016. We were just commenting that all of a sudden 2016 seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Um, Donna was born in 1989 in Jerusalem, and wonder, just as a way of orienting us, if you could read the first couple of paragraphs from the book, which is your first book,
Mhm.
at least on a large scale. How many copies of the book did you print?
How many copies? We printed 900, and then the publisher has their own copies, and then I have my own copies. But
Right.
we made an edition of 900.
I was thinking about scale because I know that your other publications, I mean, this is not your first publication, but your other publications are on very small scale,
Oh
like
yeah.
ones and twos, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. The only other book that I ever had that was like a success, if you want to call it that, was my rejection letter book that I um also handmade, very small edition, and people have it. So the rest of the other publications I've ever made were just artist copies, so I just have just the one copy
Right.
that I made.
No,
Yeah.
you have one that I covet that has the transparency mounted in the cover.
Yeah, I did that one for my MFA thesis show. So I made that handmade, printed everything
Mhm.
myself, yeah. But yeah, I have just the one copy.
All right. So from the Kehrer book, the 2024 book, Why Am I Sad? Here is the first couple of paragraphs of the introduction.
Yes, I'm gonna read. I'm just opening. First, I just want to say thanks for even having me here and allowing me to kind of talk about the book and share it with um everyone, and just have the platform to kind of speak about it. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being
I'm
here.
gonna read the short beginning of the text. It's estimated that almost 280 million people worldwide live with depression. Among this staggering number, this book unveils the personal narrative of just one of them, me. Why am I sad? Well, perhaps it runs in my blood, a genetic legacy I've inherited. Or maybe it's woven into the complex tapestry of my family, of my family fabric. Ironically, it could be the soul bond I share with my mother, a connection tinged with sadness. My upbringing in a small town, born to immigrant parents, was a kaleidoscope of culture, landscape, languages, and culinary delights. English echoed through the halls of my home. Sorry. English in reading is always hard for me sometimes. Savory aroma of shepherd's pie and the sweet decadence of what my dad called ding pudding on account of it being made in a microwave. Yet beyond our doorstep, Hebrew dominated my interaction in school and with friends. As a child of immigrants, I found myself living in a duality that often left me feeling like an outsider in both worlds. I was a cultural chameleon, navigating the ever-shifting boundaries of identity. Amidst the panacopy of conflicting cultures, there was a profound sense of isolation, a feeling of not quite belonging to either place. It was as if I were adrift in the sea of identities, constantly searching for solid ground amid the shifting tides of self-definition.
One of the things that strikes me about Why Am I Sad is the challenge of photographing something that's invisible. You know, depression is something that so many of us know. I am a longtime sufferer, experiencer, living with depression and mental health concerns. And I often wonder about how to put it into pictures. And I think that you in your book have tried to come to an answer by saying, why am I sad? And I think that maybe it comes down to, why am I sad? I've been interested that the I in your title is not capitalized. So there's both a modesty and a curiosity that I have about it. How did you first start to realize that you might be able to make images that talked about depression?
That's a good question. I feel like in many ways it took a long time, but I think when I look back, I think really from the beginning, when I just started with photography back in my undergrad, I always tend to make work that kind of lean towards the idea of family and the connection that I have with my family and my mother. So I always made work around this idea of family, right? So I think it just made sense that because I was drawn to taking photos of my family and that dynamic, and because of my mother's mental health issues and my own, it was a natural progression into it, because it's just a part of the story. But when I was taking photos in the beginning, I never really thought of it as being a project about mental health or depression. I think that's something that came much, much later. And it really came when I decided to make the book, and specifically this project. It started, after many years of kind of feeling very lost with my own photography and challenges of immigration and just the anxiety of that. That in 2019 was the kind of the pivotal point where I started thinking about this idea of, why am I sad, right? Like this question, like, why am I so sad? Why is it something that I've been struggling with for so many years? And then I started really thinking about it and trying to understand how my photography is connected to this feeling of sadness, and how my upbringing was connected to it, and how my connection to my mother is connected. So it kind of clicked, I think, in my head that maybe things are connected, even before I knew they were connected.
There was probably, I mean, before there was a project, there was life.
Yeah, that's yes, that's absolutely how it felt. Like I was taking photos because that's who I am as a person, and it's what felt right, and how I felt that I could express myself through photography. But it's really with this project that I kind of almost like zoomed in a little bit and focused a little bit on the reason behind why I do the things that I do. And I think the book doesn't necessarily answer this, massive question of why am I sad, but it's more like a gateway towards learning and understanding a little bit more about my own mental health and how photography has been not only a huge help in understanding and using it to kind of heal, but also in a way has been also a burden and a big part of anxiety that didn't always help this feeling of depression. So this project kind of is trying to do this examination of this heavy
Right.
subject matter.
Heavy is one word that I wouldn't use to describe the book. Um, I'm going to bring up the book because I'm suspecting that not everyone has had a chance to look at it in person. Hopefully, what people are seeing there is the cover of a book. Is that what people are seeing? Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to shift it a little bit to make sure that it looks better. Okay. So the cover went through a few iterations, I think, um, but somehow along the way you hit on the idea of the smiley as you refer to it, and I think no one else has a better single name for the happy face logo than the smiley, which I like hearing you talk about. But tell me a little bit about your work with the designer just to arrive at the cover.
So before I found the designer, before I really started the book process, I knew that when and if I did the book, I didn't want to have the cover with a photograph. I felt like my work is
No
very,
photograph.
sorry?
You said with no photograph on it.
Right, yes. I didn't want it to have a photograph for two reasons. One, because I didn't feel that there's one photo in the project that really, highlights the project. I didn't have that photo that can tell the story of the entire project. And second, I wanted something that would be a little bit more enigmatic, more mysterious, and a little unconventional, maybe, especially in this world of photo books. I wanted it to be a little different, and I wanted the cover to be almost its own piece of work, something that conveys something in addition to all the images. So the designer that I work with, I've been following him, funny enough, on TikTok for a long time, and I always loved what he produced and made, and I just liked his creativity. He was very interesting to me. So I just reached out to him, and he was very generous and said yes. And he, we met, and I basically told him what the work was about. I shared all the images, and then he went and came back with samples, and this one was just the one that made the most sense. I just felt like he really captured the essence of the work, of how, this very simple gesture of taking a happy face, tearing it in half, turning it upside down, and it's suddenly a sad face, but it still has the happiness in it. It's not like the happiness went away.
Right.
So how the happy and sad kind of coexist. So I thought that was very smart, and just like a very
it's a little bit subversive.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
little bit of a twist that happiness can mask unhappiness at times.
exactly, yes. So
I wanted just to show people what they're looking at. This is a book that is basically cardboard. I mean, the material is bookboard basically, but very thin bookboard, so it's quite flexible. I don't want to bend it too hard because it will snap, I'm sure. But it's got a beautiful seam that's been laid in, and then the book is kind of dropped onto the cover. If you can see, I don't know if I'm doing a good job here, but the the book is sort of flat out. The cover is flat out, and then the book is like a softbound book bound into a hardcover. And I'm just taken with the sort of bare feel of it. That's quite a distinctive take on a book design.
And I was actually inspired by the book that I made that you mentioned, that I did for my MFA, that also had the bare
Mhm.
book board, and I had the
Right.
Kodak slide inserted into it, and I just like the feeling of like just the texture, but
Mhm.
also just being bare, right? Like this idea of not being covered, not being
Right.
hidden away. It's something that's just very out and open, just honest. So I really like the
Mhm.
feeling of the bare book cover.
And you plunge right in. I mean, there's a yellow cover page, but then this image just fills the page, the very first page of the book. Um,
So
I'm gonna
I
I'm gonna slide along while we talk. I'll just kind of be flipping through the book so we can get a sense.
so this the first image I chose to do as the first image because it's one of the images that really were the starting point of the project. I took this photo when we went to the West Coast for the first time, and I was in a very dark place, and I haven't been taking photos for a long time. And the West Coast was just like so sunny and bright and beautiful, and I felt like the opposite, like completely different.
Mm.
Um, but there was like a almost like a spark that happened in the West Coast. For me, like it just made me almost fall in love with photography again. And specifically this photo, because it was just like this unique moment of finding such a simple gesture of having the hazard reflector in this array of beautiful purple flowers, but like
Mhm.
one of them is
Almost.
fallen down. I just found it to be very like symbolic, and it had like this humor to it, but it was just like strikingly beautiful. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just felt
It's
like the photo was kind of like this like opening to the book because that's how I felt at the time. It's like
Mhm.
it
Well,
opened
the
up.
cover was sort of an interesting lead in, just because within the midst of happiness, there's a little bit of a flip.
Yeah.
There's a mask that is sort of come undone.
Mhm.
Uh, so one of the things that I know about you, having talked to you, is that you love road trips,
Mhm.
and that not unlike one of our previous guests on the Banters, um, Diana Matar, the road trip itself becomes a kind of end in itself, and the pictures emerge along the way. It's sort of like you have life, and then there's the project. You have road trip, and then there's the project. Um,
Right.
tell us a little bit about the areas of the country that you liked to travel in, and something about your experience on the road.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky to have a partner who's also a photographer. So I think for us, when we go and do photography trips, it's kind of like our way to dedicate time to photography.
Mhm.
It's hard with, regular life and jobs and, just the everyday grind. So it's almost our way to just disconnect and just go and photograph. That's what we do. And we try and go to as many bizarre and quirky and small and kind of unique places in the United States, because there's a lot of amazing gems around the country that are just great, and they have amazing things to see and do. So yeah, we've been to the West Coast, and there's a huge chunk of the United States that I haven't been yet. My goal is really to try to go to absolutely all of the states at least once.
Mhm.
So that's kind of our goal, to try and go to all the national parks and all the states. But for me,
Looking.
the road trip is less about the place. It's more about the opportunity um, to look, to see, to find, right? So it's just a an excuse to go venture out and find these unique moments that I can't find here next to me at the moment. So the road trip is just I think in a way a tool, just like the camera is a tool. It's just a way to find these moments that are very American, very unique in their own right. Yeah.
Do you think that the Americanness that you were looking for is defined or encompassed in certain ways by the Depression that you identify? Is there a unique Americanness about the project, or is it more international, worldwide?
I don't know. I think it's a good question, and I don't know if I know the answer, but I think, I am an immigrant in this country, but I'm also a citizen of the country now. So I've gone through a process, right, of becoming from someone who's like a stranger to the country to being very comfortable to being, okay, I'm a citizen, right? This is now mine. So I think with that process of just going through immigration, and the road trip, it's like you just feel that you're documenting the things around you, and it's your home and it's your place. So for me, I don't know if I can do this specific project anywhere else, because the images are just, the landscape of the images is very American. It's very just like these very unique small towns that are very American, with their rich history, but also a lot of decay and loss and sadness in a lot of these places that kind of got forgotten. So it's a very interesting landscape to travel through.
Mhm.
And I think even though the book is not about America or the country itself, I don't think I could necessarily make this project in a different country. So
There's certain things are intrinsically sad, like a dead animal beside the road seems, there's something, there's pathos, there's, something sad verging on pathetic. Did you find maybe there's something sad overall about the American landscape, but that would sort of be countered by the the glories of the landscape that people are always talking about?
I think also in many ways I am, I'm painting this landscape with my own sadness, right? Because I think maybe another photographer would have done the exact same trip and seen the exact same things and would have documented them, and it would have felt maybe completely different. I think in many ways it's almost like a little bit of both. I think sometimes the landscape is very sad, but sometimes the landscape is just landscape, and it's me bringing my own kind of depression and heartache and struggle onto these moments, and I'm painting them in this light, and I'm putting them in this capsule of sadness because it's who I am as a person. So I think it's kind of both sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But regarding the dead animals thing, I don't know. I've for like many years I've always been very fascinated with dead insects. I photographed them many times. I collect them, like I have in my house, dead insects. I don't know. I think I find them to be very interesting. I think roadkill in general is something that's interesting, because it's sad and beautiful at the same time. And I think that's kind of the core of my project. And I don't know, sometimes for me, documenting an animal that died on the side of the road, it's like a way to give them like this renewed purpose, as if I'm like allowing them to live on as this canonic, moment that they're gonna live forever, right, in this image. So I think it's like trying to like almost save them in a way.
I think there's something also very intrinsically sad about broken signs, about empty signs, about motels in general, in the
Yeah.
American landscape.
Yeah, I don't know why motels kind of became not a huge theme in the book, but um pretty, there's a few images of motels, and I think that maybe comes from the idea of just like this Americana that I just love so much, this feeling of the road trip and that feeling
Mhm.
of I don't know, you like
Yeah,
traveling the state with no boundaries, almost like everything is up for grabs. And I think I just have a tendency to like nostalgic things, like for example, oh, the vintage snapshots like this. So I think that's why finding things like old motels, they just kind of
well, it's really interesting that the picture on the left was made in Arizona,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah,
and the picture on the right was made in Queens, a tetraptych of a lady. And it's almost as though place is less important than resonance.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think, when I put the captions, it's more like I guess like just a traditional thing, but I think people do enjoy learning where things were taken just as a nice little tidbit, right? Like it's interesting. But for me, it's never about the location. I'm not trying to document the state or the city or the town. I'm I'm really finding my own moment in the state, in this place, right? So for me, it's not about the place, and I am happy to find these objects and these moments anywhere, as so for me there's no restrictions or limitations on where I can find these
Right.
objects.
This is a lovely little moment of adapting the smiley to a circumstance.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of became almost like a game. Like in the beginning, it came very naturally. I just randomly came across happy faces. I wasn't searching for them in any way, and it was really in the beginning of the project that I was still kind of not even sure what the project was about, that they started showing up. But once I
Mhm.
was more clear about the name of the project and the direction I wanted to take it, I felt like these like happy faces were like taunting me. They just kept like showing up,
They
and
were everywhere.
yeah, they almost like became almost like a game, who can find who first. And I think that was kind of interesting, how it developed in a way.
Did the American Southwest, did that seem like a very foreign environment to you?
I think, everything is, because United States is so different than from where I was, where I'm from originally. So even, New York City in itself is this crazy place to live in, right? And then New York State is completely different. And then you go to the West Coast and it feels completely different. So really every state, it's almost like a whole new journey of different type of people, and just like the weather and just the landscape and how people live there is from state to state is very different. So um I found it to be interesting, but definitely the West Coast has been very fun to document. It's very
Mhm.
beautiful down there. Yeah.
Oops. There are some of your collected insects.
Yes. So yeah, this one I got a jar of bees from a friend. Um, and I just took a photo of them in my old apartment, but also in
Mhm.
Queens. Yeah. I still have them, the bees.
I mean, there's so much, so many elements to this about loss and change and time passing, and but the pictures in general have that kind of that not a happy veneer, but they have this brightness to them.
Yeah, I think when I discovered color photography, for me it was very enlightening. When I
Mhm.
found it, I was really just mesmerized by how color is so important in a photo and how it can be used to tell a story. And my teacher at the time, she showed me the work of Japanese photographer Takashi Yasumura, and I encourage everyone to look him up. His work,
So that
Domestic
was
Scandals. Um,
right.
and I think if you see
His
it,
last
and
name again is his last name is Yoshimura.
I think it's Yasumura, which is Yasumra, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
I looked at the work and it definitely has correlation to yours. It
yeah.
also links a little bit to Rinko Kawauchi.
Yeah, another one of my favorites. Yeah, so I think when I saw his work and kind of learned that still life in particular, but color still life was able to tell a story in such a beautiful way with very little amount of details, but the color and the composition and the object and where you come with as an artist to the photo is just so interesting. So he's been a huge inspiration to me, and that's how I started using photography myself. So yeah, I think it's just a powerful tool to use, but I think I enjoy color and I love color photography. So I don't try and make photos that are sad in the conventional way where, like, if you think of sadness, you think of melancholy in the sense of like black and white, dark, heavy, um, almost unhappy, bright colors, like muted colors maybe. For me, I see the world in vibrant colors, and that's how I live my life, right? So I'm not shying away from color because it's everywhere around me. But I think the project is about how you balance these two emotions of like you're sad and there's a lot of negative and heavy emotions that you're carrying, but you're still also living your life and moving forward and trying to find yourself. So I think people have this duality of happy and sad, up and down, you know? So that's why for me, photography has always been very vibrant because that's just how I see the world. I don't see it muted. And I know that's why
You want to
sometimes for people it's hard to see the project as sad because they see it so colorful. But I think I don't know, like I don't think sadness has a color to it, if that makes sense. So I
yeah.
think vibrancy can still be a representation of mental health and sadness alongside happiness and joy and all of the other emotions that we think of. So I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the project is kind of shake up a little bit the idea of
Mhm.
what it means to document these heavy emotions.
You've spoken a little bit about vanitas and the traditions of metaphors of life and death, and I feel like we're seeing some wonderful representations. Is this a real deer on top of that tombstone?
No, it's like a ceramic sculpture of some sort, but for
An
this one,
add-on.
yeah, no, for this image specifically, I wanted to document it from the back to have this idea of this anonymous grave, right? It's not about the particular person, it's the idea of life and death, like you said. But there's
Mhm.
also it's kind of beautiful. I mean, it's still lusciously green, and it was a little bit of a cloudy day, but it was still a very nice day. And you know, this
Yeah,
year is like it's very sweet. It's a very sweet gesture to put this
it's
here.
ironic in contrast to the next image, which is
Right.
also got its own beauty, but
Yeah.
and lushness, but also tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that kind of sums up the project, this balance between happy and sad and just like,
Mhm.
you know, feeling
Isn't it
uncomfortable with
interesting that stuffed animals are also sad?
it. yeah. I think everything can be sad if you allow me to document it. It becomes sad automatically. Yeah, I think some images are just obviously are much easier to decode as sad. Like the photo of the water slide that's kind of abandoned and forgotten. And this photo, for example, the happy face is actually nearby a grave. So yeah, it's obviously, it kind of feels more sad intuitively, but I
Right.
think that's what I kind of like. I like making people question what they see a little bit, and kind of, I enjoy the irony of the images, and I enjoyed the humor in them also, in addition to having them echo the idea and the notion of mental health, and
Right.
the ability to talk about it.
This is the last image in the book, sort of a positive message delivered at dusk.
Yeah,
Look up and
I wanted to juxtapose it with the first image that I started the book with the sunny side up. That was more like a upbeat, kind of a fun summer text, where this is more, you almost feel like the book kind of goes through a progression of getting a little darker and muted, where the end image is very dark. It's almost the end of the day.
right,
And
dusk.
yeah, like the message is positive, but the image is very kind of heavy, and so I wanted to kind of juxtapose the two, the beginning and the end, to kind of end the story in a more like a ambiguous way, I think.
Donna, thank you for walking us through the book like that. I really, really enjoyed it. It's great to hear your voice attached to the images, and to get a sense of the travels that you undertook to convey this experience.
Yeah, thanks for letting me.
It's a full what, 3 or 4 years worth of road trips?
The oldest image in the book is from 2015, so
15.
technically from there, but the big chunk of the images are from about 2019 to 2023.
All right. Well, I would love to invite anyone who is listening to unmute themselves and ask a question or join in the conversation. I know there are people who like to ask questions, like Joel. Joel, what's going on?
Sure. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Donna. This was interesting to look at. I guess my question is, just out of curiosity. I don't mean to be challenging with it, but I'm just wondering what qualities does photography bring to the project that you value that another medium doesn't have? Why is this a photographic project?
I think because I can't paint. No, I'm joking. But I think for me, photography has always been a way to document the world, right? So the reason I gravitate towards still life photography in particular is because I'm able to kind of enjoy a little bit of the rich history of painting, with the idea of like symbolic, this idea of vanitas, idea of coded messages that sometimes paintings have the benefit of, right? Because we look at photography as more of a documentary, real life, truth teller medium. So for me, my kind of like balance is having still life, because then I can explore photography in a way that's maybe different. It's not documentary in the sense that I'm not trying to say a truth of anything. I'm not documenting a place or a person. I'm documenting things that I see with my own kind of coded language, with my own set of symbols and ideas, and the fact that I can group them together makes the story, because I'm grouping them together and I'm making the work based on who I am as a person. So technically, I'm sure someone could take all these images and paint them, right? But I don't think that's possible, because these things I found in the real world. These things exist. I didn't create them. I created them based on, seeing them capturing with my camera. So I don't know. I think technically you could make it with a different medium, but you would have to be a different artist. And I can only be myself, and I use photography to make work. So for me, it's it has to come out in this photographic nature, because that's just who I am as a person. If that makes sense, yeah.
So it's partly the matter of finding things that are authentically there. Is that part of the?
Yeah, I mean, I do like some of the images are obviously manipulated in the sense that let's say like the butterfly, I'm holding it and I'm very active in holding the butterfly wing and put it in front of the camera and documenting. But I found the butterfly in one of my travels and then I took it home and documented it. It's not like I'm trying to say that I don't manipulate sometimes the world. I do. But I think for me, it's like finding these things and almost like being surprised that I found them. Like, why am I finding this random smiley in, a graveyard? Like, why is it there for me to document? For me, that's what's inspiring, and that what makes the work kind of roll. Because I don't know if I could think of making an image like that if I didn't see it, if I didn't feel a connection to it, and if I didn't allow myself to see the world in that way, to be able to capture it. So yeah, I think photography is a great medium. I personally love it. I think still life is very powerful, and I hope people see it through a project like this, that it has a lot of power just to tell a story.
What about the element of subversiveness? George mentioned that early on. Do you think that is it correct to say that you're interested in a certain amount of subversiveness? And if so, does photography lend itself to that?
Do you mind explaining the question a little bit more? Like, what do you mean by that? Like,
By subversiveness? Well, by photographing something that ostensibly represents one thing, but suggesting that you're saying something quite at odds with that obvious intent of in the object itself, or the common way of perceiving it, that you're subverting it, that you're going
yeah,
against the grain.
yeah. I think sometimes it's hard because it's like it is sometimes something that you look at and after the fact. Sometimes you see something, you capture it because it does something to you, and you get that feeling of like, oh, I really need to document this. You feel a connection to it. And sometimes, like, when you start looking at the project slowly and kind of building it and piecing all of the images together, you kind of really start seeing how motifs come together and how symbols come together. So it's not as if I'm always very aware of what I'm searching for. It comes out very naturally and just very intuitive. But then when I created the book, I was seeing all the themes, all the visuals that started to come together and become like a symbolic language that only when I really started to look at it in the book form, I was like, oh, why do I have so many photos of deers? Why am I, gravitating towards it? And then you start thinking about it, and then you start making work with that mind state. So it's kind of like a process of learning your own language as you go to kind of create this,
Right.
symbolic.
The subversiveness may have as much to do with how we look at the pictures as how Donna is
Right,
constructing them.
Which is also a big part of art, just allowing people to see the work in the way they want to see it.
Other questions? Robert. Oh, you can unmute yourself, I think. There you go.
I did. Hi, Dana.
Hello.
So the title of your very wonderful book is Why Am I Sad? Do you have an answer?
No. So it's funny because in the beginning of the project, I originally had a question mark. It was, why am I sad, with a question mark? And as I was working on the book, we decided to remove the question mark because it's a question as much as it's a statement, right? So I think for me, it's not about finding a solution. It's not about being definitive with an answer. It's about almost like being curious about this feeling and just allowing myself to, I grew up in a home where you tend to keep things bottled down. You don't share. It's very private. It's like a taboo type of thing. You don't tell anyone. So I grew up feeling very, a lot of shame and guilt and resentment. And I felt like I had to deal with everything myself. So when I found art and photography, that was my way to talk about it, right? So allowing myself to talk about it and think about it and kind of not to have this guilt and shame to the work is what really is allowing me to open up and, I guess,
Well,
expand on this notion of the question. But I think for me, there's no definitive answer, and I think it's something that I want to continue to explore. Even though I do have a book, for me the project is still, I'm going on with it.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about the non-question of why am I sad is that it's couched in this notion of affectlessness. The way that if you're severely depressed, all of those accents and punctuation marks seem to drift away a little bit. Like, why am I sad? It's sort of like a heavy blanket. And when I think about the subversive quality, I look at the photographs and I think, well, I'm not feeling that way. I mean, it's complicated because the affectlessness of the title and of the general notion of depression as a mental illness seems countered by the images. I
Yeah,
guess I keep saying the same thing over and over, but
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
other questions? We're here.
Good wait time, George.
Yeah. Did you have something else, Robert, you wanted to chime in?
Well, I was struck, Donna, by the minimalism in the photographs. I took some notes. There are a lot of isolated objects. There's just the feeling I get is a feeling of aloneness. And one thing that I don't remember whether George said it or you said it, but it was like maybe it was you. You said, I'm starting to find happy faces everywhere. And it reminded me that when you start to look for something in the environment starts to just send it to you in ways that you don't expect. It's like if I said to you, so you live in Forest Hills. After this is finished, if you go outside and start looking for blue Hondas.
Oh, funny enough, I've been seeing Cybertrucks everywhere since
Yes.
everyone's been talking about. But no, it's absolutely.
That's why I'm sad, Donna.
No, but it's true. Like sometimes, like when you start thinking of something, it becomes a part of your what's the word I'm looking for? Like it becomes a part of your conscious. And then suddenly you're more aware of it, so you see it more often. And I think in my work, that's really what happens. I become more hypersensitive to things like roadkill. Like the butterfly, I was able to see a dead butterfly in the middle of a road, like because I'm so in tune with looking for it and searching for it that I am like I'm able to catch it. Like so. I think once I became more aware and I became more the process of the work and the bookmaking became more deliberate. I think absolutely things became more intentional, and it became like a joke, like how many, like every time I went into a town and they didn't have a smiley, I was like almost offended that they didn't have one for me, right? So it became like a way for me to also stay focused in many ways. Like it gave me like a mission, like something to look forward to, something to search for, that made it easier for me to photograph, because sometimes it is hard to photograph when you're feeling very in your head and a lot of anxiety, and just this sadness is sometimes makes it very hard to be creative. So having that reason to photograph has been also very helpful. So that's absolutely true. And I think the idea of me isolating has just been, I don't know, I've always done it. Maybe it's the camera that I use, and maybe it's just the way I plant myself in front of a scene, that I have a tendency to really focus on the one object or the one element that I'm interested in. And I don't have a lot of wide angle shots. So I don't know, I think it's just an aesthetic that I kind of built over the years.
Well, there's a zooming in quality that I think is true in terms of sadness, and in terms of the scale of sadness that one experiences. I
Right.
recently lost a photographer friend who passed away from cancer in many years, and his death was not a surprise, but it's a tragedy in its the sense of loss and immediacy. I was reminded of 2001 and the bombing of the World Trade Center. I lost another friend, a very close photographer friend that year, and I remember the enormity of 9/11 compared to the intensity of my loss of my friend. And 9/11 happened a long way away from me. It was very remote, and I felt like it was almost unmeasurable. But the presence of the loss of one friend, one photographer, seemed extra tragic. And I sort of weighed that notion of scale and sadness, and it's been it I'm not sure that it bears weight in your narrative, but it has struck me that there's a relative quality to sadness.
Yeah, I think for me, like really the point of making the work was, I mean, of course, it's always selfish, right? Like you always want to make a book, you want to share your work, right? You worked so hard to make the images, you want to kind of celebrate them with people. But for me, it was really about opening a conversation, allowing myself to be honest about the subject, and feeling unafraid to talk about it, because I've been very afraid to talk and be honest about that aspect of my life for many years before this project. So I didn't know how people would react to it. I was afraid that maybe publishers or people who are like important in the industry would see it as a weakness, right? Like as if you're admitting that you're not good in a way, like you're broken in some way, right? So I wanted to allow myself to be honest about it, but also I wanted to open it up to people to just like talk about it, like it's okay. And I think the fact that so many people struggle with depression, and it might look different for people, but I think for everyone there's a common ground that everyone can kind of understand. So if so many people are dealing with these emotions, why should it be something that we shouldn't talk about? Why are we hiding it, right? So I think it's just a way to allow people to talk about it in a way that's more safe, right? Because it's like around photography and about art, and it's still in this realm of this beauty, and it's a safe zone because we're still all of us are artists, and we're kind of familiar with talking about art. So yeah, I just wanted to be able to share with people and open the dialogue. And I think when I started the book, and a lot of people reached out to me and talked to me about their own stories and their own struggles, and it was just a beautiful interaction, because I think it just allowed people to feel comfortable to share it with me, because they felt that they didn't have to hide it. So I think that's great.
Do you see in your work that you're doing now or forthcoming, do you feel a sense of advocacy or urgency around the notion of depression and mental health, or do you feel like you're shifting gears or shifting point of view a little bit?
I don't know if I would call myself advocate in a sense like, traditionally what the word would mean, because there's so many people out there in the world doing like amazing things for the world, and I'm here just being an artist, right? So I don't want to take away from the word and its importance, but for me, I've always tried to talk about these notions in the art world that are uncomfortable, if it's rejection letters and failure and sadness, because it's always been something that I struggled with and I know other people are struggling with. And sometimes it's comforting when you hear someone else say that, oh, I got a rejection letter today, and you say, oh, I got the same rejection letter. You suddenly feel like you have a community and you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're unworthy of something. So I think when things are hidden away in the shadows, it's easier to feel more isolated. And I think if we can just talk about it with each other, it just makes it feel less scary. So yeah, I've always kind of tried to highlight these types of ideas. And I think it also does come from the fact that I do run the photo magazine that you mentioned in the beginning, because I do have this unique perspective of being an artist and a gatekeeper in a way. And I always struggle with this dynamic of being both, because I know what it means to get a rejection letter, but I also know what it means to write a rejection letter. So I just try to be very aware of these things and just try and share that as much as I can.
Well, I know you mentioned that you were going to portfolio review coming weekend. And I wish you well with the gatekeepers.
Thank you. I need it. Yes.
I know you said you were seeing 4 curators remotely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that the book will be impressive and that you will do well.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah, I think for me,
sense. And in closing,
yep.
go ahead. No, I was just going to say in closing, I wanted to say thank you, but it sounds like you might have something else to add.
Oh no, I was just saying about the creators that I just felt like I wanted to share the work with people, and sometimes it's good to also share with communities that don't necessarily live on the internet. So like I'm trying to also bring the work to people to actually have conversations like these that I think are very important with actual human beings that you can have a real connection with. So I think that's why I'm kind of trying to push the work also to the real space to yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing the work and yourself to the public sphere and for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Stirling, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen.
Next month we'll be featuring the photographer Maria Sturm and her book, You Don't Look Native to Me. Oh, nice. So we'll see everyone then.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for coming.